Good morning, everyone. Mi dispiace, purtroppo non parlo italiano, ma volevo ringraziarvi per il vostro invito. Thank you for having us here. We're very excited to be a part of this event and for you all taking part here in Milano. I'm Sam DeBord with Real Estate Standards Organization. We are an organization with about 700 member organizations, headquartered in about 20 countries. These companies work in over 100 countries around the world. We create the data standards to allow your technology systems to talk to each other. Much like a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi, the standards that we create allow interoperability for data to flow, for information to flow between your technology systems. Not only do we create those standards that your technology uses, we do certification, technical certifications. So on an average MLS system, we test to ensure that systems that comply with standards can be certified so that you get certainty when you purchase technology to ensure it can interoperate. So in Paris, there was one message that really seemed to resonate, and it's really resonated since, and it's that transparent marketplaces move inventory. We're here for business. We're here for commerce. Transactions move the marketplace, and that transparency requires rules. It requires a foundation of rules to ensure that there's trust, whether it's a stock market, whether it's a real estate market. The rules that guide the information at the foundation of the market are there to ensure trust and ensure transactions can turn over. This is what gets us a liquid marketplace. And it's a big deal because it's a big marketplace, because we estimate there's about 30 trillion euros worth of transactions globally on an annual basis that turn over. And there's about 600 trillion euros worth of value in global real estate. So having a liquid market that turns over, that has transparency, builds that marketplace and that transaction flow. And there's really some core concepts to that. Yes, we need the commerce, we need the business. That's the top of the pyramid. But to have that, we need that trusted data, that trusted information that consumers, buyers and sellers can rely on. And at the foundation, to have that trust, we've got to have the rules. We have to have standards. We have to have policies. Sometimes we need to have regulations to ensure we build that information baseline so that the transactions can flow in that marketplace. You know the internet well. The internet is just a bunch of open standards. It's growth, it's success, it's value to us, we take for granted. But it's just a bunch of open standards. You don't need to know what these things are, but TCP/IP, FTP, HTTP, HTML. These are publicly understood rules that everyone participating in that marketplace understands, knows, and if they can abide by those rules, they can participate in that marketplace, which is a marketplace of standards. And yes, there's a lot of technology. There's a lot of technology involved in the infrastructure, hardware, software, lots of things that are critical infrastructure for the web to work. But that technology doesn't make the data flow on its own. The information doesn't flow just because there's technology. People have to make that decision. Leaders have to make that decision to make information flow through that network. Because the web's really just an idea. It's a story that people told to each other, that we could have an information resource that is an ecosystem, that is the rising tide that lifts all boats, that we'd all be better off if we had this cooperative ecosystem, but we couldn't have it without rules. It wouldn't work without open rules that everyone understood so that everyone could participate according to those rules. Probably sounds familiar. Because the MLS is just an idea. It's just a story that people told to each other, that we could have an improved ecosystem of information for our businesses, for our consumers, but only if we had rules, only if we had a foundation of standards so that everyone participating in that system would understand how to contribute and how to consume that information from that market. Now, those are kind of big stories. I want to break it down to something a little smaller. This sort of relates to what we're doing here and the diversity of MLS implementations internationally. That's my dad's truck growing up. It's a 1964 Chevy C10 pickup truck. Yes, it's yellow with a blue door, and we'll get to that. It's a standard size truck. My dad was a school teacher. In the summers, he worked construction. And at one point on a job, somebody ran into the side of his truck. He had to replace the door. Well, how did he replace the door? He didn't go build his own door. He didn't go reinvent the wheel. He went to the junkyard. He found a 1964 Chevy C10 truck. Happened to be blue. Replaced the door. Same size bolts. Same size hinges. It worked because it's all he needed. It was a very simple utilitarian work truck. Now, as a kid, I didn't really enjoy that look. I would give him a hard time. Come on, Dad. You've got to paint the truck. I don't want you driving around town with that. But he didn't care. All he wanted was a utilitarian work truck to do the job. Now, on the right is also a 1964 Chevy C10 pickup truck. I know this is a very American-sounding story with gas-guzzling Chevy pickup trucks, but that's the point. This is a different implementation of the same standard. You can add all of these interesting, innovative components because the frame's the same size, the axle's the same size, the bolt patterns are the same size. The standard of that vehicle to make it move is the same, but the implementation is very different. And that's what we see in international markets. Some of you will just look at a straightforward, simple MLS implementation. Some of you will have very different implementations of MLS. It may be government related. It may be private. It may be a cooperative like the US. The MLS system we have in the US may not fit your marketplace. The data dictionary that we use, you may use different parts of that than they use in Canada. But all of these different implementations will fit the legal, the cultural, the language differences that you have in your marketplaces, but the core will be the same. The core will be a cooperative open standards and rules that make sure the foundation works, that make sure you have trust in that information in your market. Because we know what it looks like when we don't have rules and we don't have standards. You've seen this in many marketplaces, where the same listing shows up 3 times at 3 different prices on the same website, probably already sold. It may have never been a valid listing in the beginning. And this is not just a bad consumer experience. This is disinformation flowing on the web from real estate companies to consumers. Luckily, you're working on the solution, this incredible information resource that the MLS provides, that with those trusted rules and standards as the baseline of your MLS, you can provide this experience that folks depend on. We don't know who that person is. It could be a buyer, could be a seller, could be a government employee, could be an appraiser, could be an investor. But they're all dependent on that same information resource of the MLS to make better decisions, to make data-driven decisions. So I want to thank you. I want to applaud you for having the vision and the courage to tell that story back in your marketplaces and to bring this information resource to your consumers, to your businesses, and your communities. Thank you.